Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hello my friends and welcome to the final weekly wrap-up of 2023. I can't believe we're here already. Oh, my lipstick is glooping. It's so much fun. I'm not going to waste any time because we have some people to thank and then we have 20 books to go over. Now, the thing is, though, is that a good amount of these are my rereads, right? I've talked about that enough. I reread a lot of my favorite books in December, and there's going to be a whole video very soon with my top 10 reads of the year where I'll go more in detail about everything that made those books hit to the top of the 500 plus books that I read this year. So when I come across any of them that are a reread for that, I'm gonna kind of skip over them just to save us some time because y'all know how I like to ramble, and there's plenty of other books that were brand new to me that I do want to go into more detail about. So stay tuned for my favorites. Otherwise, you can also go back. I have this playlist has now I think 47 videos on it, which will have me talking about every single book that I've read this year, which is awesome. But first, I have some people to thank. So if you follow me like day to day, you'll know that almost 2 weeks ago, I almost lost my Patreon. It was one of the most stressful 6 hours ever. And so I did a live show where a lot of you showed up. A lot of you sent me gifts to, you were just so kind to me that day. It was terrifying to think that all 80% of my income could just disappear like that. It's one thing when people say oh, diversify your income if you're on YouTube, and that's true, but there's only so much you can diversify it when I don't rely on just YouTube funds, but I rely on Patreon, which is, it's a whole big thing. So anyway, thank you to everyone who's there for me. And we had some new followers, not new followers, but new supporters because of that. So I also, before this, I had created a new tier on my Patreon that was kind of it wasn't a secret, but I also didn't advertise it big and huge. I didn't make a big deal about it, but I wanted to make a tier that was for people who aren't necessarily looking for extra things. There's nothing wrong with wanting extra things. Again, I don't mean to take too long on this. I'll talk more about it in my yearly wrap up, but I have seen other creators do this and other people that I follow that it's more of we'll call it a producing tier, which is what I named it. I called it the Proud Producer. And you'll notice at the end when we get to the credits that there currently is a person who signed up for that. So this is a tier that they don't get any physical rewards. They still get all of the digital content and behind the scenes that I offer, but it's not they're getting annotated books or the book box or anything. This is purely they want to support me. And I know that this is a tier that people might not stay in for a long time. Maybe it's as a gift. It'll be for my birthday, or it'll be for all this month. We really want to help you out. And so they can join it for a month and support me at that level. And then people might leave it, which is completely understandable. But anyway, I created this tier. It's $100 a month tier. And anyone who signs up for that will be called a Proud Producer. They will have a bigger title card at the end. They're also now listed in my description as Proud Producer. So they will be in my credits for the months that they are supporting me on this tier as someone who is, financially backing this channel. So that's just something I want to tell. That tier exists. If that's something that you're interested in supporting me at, definitely check it out. Of course, that is very helpful to me here for sure. But anyway, we do have someone who joined that. Her name is Megan. Meyers Liberty is her screen name. And thank you so much, Megan. Megan also had sent me some beautiful gifts for Christmas. And so when she signed up for this tier, I was just very touched, and it meant a lot to me, especially on the shitty day that I was having where I thought I was leaving my Patreon. On a side note to that though, I will say, if you watch the live show that I did during that time, which I do still have up, you guys were kind of helping me through that emotional couple of hours. But what I will say is that Patreon did handle it pretty quick. The suspicious activity wasn't suspicious activity that I did. I didn't break any guidelines. It looked like someone was maybe trying to log in, trying to hack it, whatever. So it's a good thing that they closed it. It's just the email that they send you is very serious because they want you to react right away and protect yourself. But it was terrifying because I had to wait for them to open, and you can't call, you have to wait for them to email you. But their initial email came back to me within an hour, and then once I answered with information, they had it back up for my patrons within another hour, and then I was able to access everything about 4 hours later, because they did like freeze my funds there so that they couldn't be like released to like the wrong bank account, basically. So anyway, that was a whole big thing and I very much appreciated it. So yeah, thank you for everyone. Now, some other new supporters that I have is that on that live stream, one of my patrons actually gifted some channel memberships. So we have some new channel members here. There was Naru, sorry if I mispronounced that. There was someone without like a name, it's just MCGB. There is Alyssa W and Ashley are all joined at the Romantic Renegade level for my channel memberships, which means they get early access to videos, able to vote in polls that I have, and yeah, stuff like that. And I do have some fun polls coming up that will be exclusive to channel members for the new year that I'm excited to implement. So I said I wasn't going to talk too long, and I spent 6 months on it, but I know who pays the bills around here, and I'm always happy to spend some time giving them thanks. So thank you for making another year of the Book Refuge happen. We'll see what happens for tax season. That is like, it's one thing to make it through the year, and then it's another to be worried about taxes, because that's a whole different thing when you're a small business and you're doing it all yourself. They really like to stick it to you with that. But let's get into the books. As I said, I have 20 of them to talk about, and some of them we're going to need to go into more detail than others. So I have my notes down here if you see me looking down, because there's a lot to remember. Also have my iced coffee. Also, it has been a shockingly nice December, and I'm glad that the sun isn't blaring in my face like it's been the last couple times, but it's also now really gloomy today. See, I'm never pleased, right? Okay, so the first thing that I finished, which we're going all the way back to, because we didn't have a wrap up last week, we're going all the way back to like the 19th or something here. I finally finished a fan fiction called Measure of a Man. I actually read a lot of fan fiction this week because the end of December is kind of my like guilty pleasure time to just read it all. But this is one that has been on my like bucket list since I first started reading fan fiction. It is so long. This one is 588,000 words, which depending on your Kindle or depending on your device is anywhere between like 2,000 to 2,500 pages. It's a long one, but it's on this bucket list for a reason. It's on people's top Dramini fics for a reason. This one doesn't have the same level of darkness, but it does have some almost like real world pain and darkness in this one. Because in this Measure of a Man, we're dealing with, I believe we're at like a 10 years later type of thing. Pretty much canon for stuff that's happened, pretty much. Kind of, sort of, right? And we have Hermione, who is a healer, and she does a lot of like, we'll just call it like pro bono or like charity work. You know, she doesn't necessarily need any money coming in. She also used to work for the ministry, and a few years ago she'd had kind of like a mental breakdown where she had overworked herself into the point where she had some blackouts. So she had to take a bit of a step back in that aspect to just kind of take some time for herself. But she gets asked by, I think it's Theo who first approaches her with this, but approaches her with a patient who is in the like early / middle stages of dementia. And this is something that Hermione has been working on because it's a disease that can affect both muggles and humans without, without disparity. This is something that, both can get, and there's no magical cure for this. In fact, if you are a witch or a wizard who gets dementia, it's actually even more dangerous for you than it might be for a no-mage, as we say, or a muggle, right? Because of having magic, this person may forget where they are or forget who they are and try to like disapparate, which could cause them to be splinched because they don't like know what they're doing. They might be trying to go to a place that doesn't exist anymore because of their, maybe some things don't exist anymore that did since they've started to deteriorate. So it's very dangerous. And this is something that Hermione's been interested in. And she gets asked to take this case. And she's like, well, who is this person that you're trying to push me to take? I don't, it's a lot of work to take on one of these clients to try to help them. And she discovers that it's Narcissa Malfoy, which she is like, I don't help people that I know, let alone someone who like, we have kind of some bad blood between us too. But she ends up meeting Narcissa and decides she's going to try to help, which means she's going to be spending a lot of time with the Malfoys, including Malfoy, who is a widower with a young son, of course. So we have Scorpius, who's about 5 in this. And y'all, the smile on my face, this is the sweetest, cutest, bestest representation of Scorpius Malfoy that I have read to date. He is perfect. He must be protected at all costs. He's a precious little bean. And he's a very, like, traumatized, sad little boy, though. His mom has died. He's being kind of, like, educated and led, like, by tutors and by Narcissa, because in the wizarding world, like, the women take care of the child until a certain age, and then if it's a man, then the man takes over, and if it's a woman, they keep taking care of them. And so Draco has, you know, he's not taking a very hands-on approach because he's trying to, you know, let his mother be that part of it. But he also doesn't have a great relationship with his mother, and it's just kind of a mess. And little Scorpius is mute. He is chosen to be. He doesn't speak. And this leads to some absolutely, like, beautiful moments in this book. Like, I could spend hours dissecting everything in this book because it is, oh, there's so many beautiful scenes. But let me just hit on the main points that make this one so good. So you have the relationship between Hermione and Scorpius that you get to watch for a good part of, I mean, it's important through the whole thing, but for the good, like, first half of this story, which, you know, how long it is, it's like 1,000 pages worth, we're building this relationship between Hermione and Scorpius. She actually starts teaching him sign language so that he can communicate that way. And she's also observing the interactions or non-interactions between Draco and Scorpius and how much longing there is between them. But Draco doesn't know how much his son wants him in his life, and Scorpius is afraid of, like, angering his father, which it's not that he would have a reason to. So there's all these complexities that Hermione, through the time she spends with them, is going to help with. Then eventually, and it is still, like, it starts to happen around the 50% into this book, so it's not like it's a slower burn by percentage wise. It just feels like it's so slow because of how many pages it takes us to get us there. But then we have a slow burn courtship between Draco and Hermione that we eventually get to. And so he has started to have feelings for her because he's seen how she is with his son. He knows her now, you know, as they're grown-ups with all the complexities of what they lived through in the war and all these things. He sees her compassion, who she is, and he's interested in her. But she doesn't think that his interest is, like, how deep as it is. So they have some, like, awkward interactions with that where he's trying to court her and she's just like, no, you don't really mean that. Like, yeah, we're attracted to each other, but this isn't going to be anything. And so they are getting in their own way quite a bit with this. But they have this beautiful, beautiful slow burn, these two do. And I want to move on with it. I'm sorry, because not all of you even care about fan fiction. But there's a podfic for this one. I'll link that below if I remember it, which I did use to help me get through about the first half of this. This book took me 3 weeks to get through. I started this like the 2nd or 3rd of December, and it took over 2 weeks to get through, and I was reading it, a little bit of it every day. Once I got to about the halfway point of the podfic, I switched completely over to the ebook because I wanted to get through it faster. And I can read faster than that, so I did do that. But this was top tier. I give this 5 stars. It wasn't a 6-star just because of how long it did take to get to stuff. Okay, it did. But this book is so worth it. It was so beautiful. This romance was wonderful. And this one is that kind where it's like, it's an examination of Malfoy in a lot of ways, and also of Hermione, and like overcoming prejudices and, you know, giving people a second chance at, you know, showing that they've changed. And it's just beautiful. There is a darker plot line going on as well, which is kind of who the current like villain is at this time and stuff that's going on. And also the ministry's a little messed up. So, okay, I spent way too much time talking about that one, but loved it. Gave it 5 stars. You know, this is single parent Draco. This is mutual pining happens. This is, you know, a sweet little boy who's just going to melt your heart. It's beautiful. But it is very long. This is about a 2.5 on the spice scale. We do get spice eventually, but it is much more like about the emotion with these two. Okay, then moving along, I read another fanfic. So see, I wanted to move on because we have lots of fanfic to talk about this week, actually. So there is Less Than Pure, which this is continuing a challenge that I've started for myself. I mentioned this a few times. I have a goal to read Hermione paired with like all of the Weasleys. And I have read her with Percy, with Bill, and with Fred. So I still have Charlie, George, and Ginny left. Yes, I want to read some Hermione and Ginny if I can find it anywhere. And so Less Than Pure is a Charlie, Weasley, and Hermione. And this one was pretty short. It was only novella length. This is a marriage law one where the Muggle witches and wizards are going to be paired with like Death Eater purebloods, because if they pair with a Muggle, they're able to get out of Azkaban. And so Hermione, if they don't find a pureblood wizard to be married to on their own, they'll be paired with a Death Eater. Weird setup, we know. But so the Weasleys are like, you need to be with Charlie. Charlie's a pureblood, be with him. But Charlie has a lot of like damage in his life. He's been taking care of the dragons where he's at. He doesn't think that he deserves a wife, especially one as, you know, he sees Hermione as sweet, his younger brother's best friend, a war heroine. Like he doesn't want to like push himself on her, but she doesn't have any other choice or she's going to be married off to someone horrible. So they get married and she ends up moving with him to where he takes care of the dragons, where he is a dragon zoologist. And she actually has some research work she can do there too. So this was just a cute short one between them. Charlie has some darkness that he has some PTSD we have to deal with him. But this was a pretty quick, you know, age gap, marriage of convenience. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. And now I just have a couple more Weasleys left. Okay, then I read Two Fights by Nikki Castle. This was my Patreon read of December. We didn't have a theme for this month. They could recommend anything they wanted to. So I won't be talking about this one because I have an exclusive review over on the Patreon for this one. The Swooning for You level and above will get that. And this is actually the one, like I annotated this. I will be raffling this off for my patrons later today, actually. So yeah, but this one was a fighter romance, a sister's best friend. And yeah, go watch my review to see how I felt about that one. At least I have a few that I can skip over a bit more in this one, because now we have another reread, which again, I won't be talking about too much. I read Grim and Barrett by Juliet Cross as one of my 6-star rereads. This one I did listen to the audio this time, which is great. I actually still haven't listened to the audio for Resting Witch Face yet either, but that one was from last year, so I'll get to that audiobook sometime. I have all the audiobooks for this series, but this is Henry and Clara. This is the wrap-up of the series. This series has such a warm, fuzzy place in my heart. Juliet is a good friend of mine, and I just love this series so much. Here's one of the beautiful covers of it. This is a friends to lovers, fated mates, and there's pretty low angst in this one. I know this wasn't everyone's favorite, but you know what? I loved it, and I'm glad that Henry and Clara didn't have to go through too much like angsty angst for theirs, because they deserved it. So there's that. Okay, then we had a random that I found. So I can't remember where I saw it. I know it was on Instagram. I wish I know who I'd first seen talking about it. But I read The Man I Know by Daisy Jane. I've read a few Daisy Jane before. She generally has pretty kinky romances. They aren't generally too dark, though they could be categorized as dark because of some of the kinks that they like, but I have found them to still be kind of fluffy in some aspects, especially her, like, the Men of Malibu or whatever. I don't know. There was some dark kinks in there, but the relationships weren't that dark, and I like that. Now, this one was very unique because this is a married couple. And it's not even a marriage in trouble. It's not a we're about to get divorced. It's not a like, you know, we had cheated and someone has to get over it. No, this is a solidly married couple. They've been together, I think, 13 years. They were an age gap when they got together. He's like 10 plus years older than her, but that's not even the drama. They have 2 kids. They have a great sex life. They are in love with each other. So what is this story about? Well, this one is a kink exploration. So our hero, his name is Lawson. It's Lawson and Jesslyn. And I have to say, I'm glad she goes by the nickname Jess, because I've so rarely heard the name Jesslyn. But one of my best friends, actually one of the people that I was spending Christmas with, her name is Jesslyn, and it would have messed with my head if there was a Jesslyn in this book. But anyway, Jess and Laws And Laws has some kinky desires. Now, these were never desires that he even really got to live out. It's not like he gave up this twisted, kinky lifestyle to marry his wife. They were just desires he always had. And for 95% of the time, everything's great. He loves his wife. They have great sex. They are still ravenous for each other after all these years. But every once in a while, he likes to imagine doing something a little bit naughtier with her, getting a little bit kinkier. And he has a few photos of her that they'd taken one time when they were being really saucy. And he had like, I can't remember if he like tied her up or if he had just like come all over her and she was like, take a picture, baby. But he has these pictures and he will go into his man cave and masturbate thinking about like forcing her. So he has rape fantasy basically. That's what it is. He has rape fantasy for his wife. And his wife walks in on him saying these things to her picture. So she knows that he's thinking about her. It's not like a thing where she's afraid he's imagining someone else. He's saying her name, you know, but he's saying things that like, I'm going to choke you on my cock. I want to be, like, he's saying these things. And she's not even upset with him, but she feels like she is missing a part of him, right? And so he's terrified that she's going to want to leave him, thinking that he's an abuser, all of these things. And they finally, like, they do have great communication because this doesn't last that long. He was ashamed of himself. He never had, like, past girlfriends before he was with his wife, they thought he was sick because he wanted this. So he's just never explored. He's never went to a kink club. He's never, like, you know, done anything with it. So he has a lot of shame about it. But when his wife finds out about it, she's just kind of like, well, baby, let's try it. Like, let's try it. So they start experimenting with this. So this isn't really this doesn't have like a third act conflict. This doesn't have that. It really is just a little short, sexy novel about these two experimenting. Where the kind of like drama is the fact that neither of them knows what they're doing. They know they like what they're doing. They enjoy this CNC play, this rape fantasy that they're setting up. They have like code that they come up with so they can do it. But because neither of them has been in the lifestyle before, though they think they're good coming up with code words or safe words and coming up with stuff, they haven't practiced some of the things they're doing. They haven't had a coach to help them. They don't know about like dungeons they could go to make sure it's a safe environment. They don't have shears ready if they're doing sharabi and things go too far. There's no way to quickly cut you out. Like, those are all things you need to have. So there is some like drama with them having some, you know, learning curves, but none of it is like angsty about it. None of them is worried about leaving each other. It's just figuring out how that's going to work. So it won't be for everyone. Some people want there to be more angst in it, but if you like CNC play or rape fantasy and you also like married couples, I thought it was beautiful watching this couple who'd been together so long and doesn't necessarily have problems because the one person wants to be kinkier. I liked seeing that as a representation and that it's not always marriage breaking because the person doesn't like the same thing as you, but it also like, you know, to be comfortable enough to share your desires so you could try it out together. So anyway, it was good. It was really good. And I gave this one 5 stars because I hadn't read anything really like that. Usually when there's a sexual, like, you know, unknown like that, they're about to break up or something because of it, you know? So I've only read a couple. There's another one. There's one by Alessandra Torre who does this as well, kind of, but they do it with like sharing, which I liked. So anyway, gave that 5 stars. This is a 4.5 on the spice scale, and there isn't really like trigger warnings for this. If you like this type of kink, that's your like warning. You know, if you like rape fantasy or CNC, that is kind of the trigger warning for this. If you don't like those, don't read this. But there isn't any trauma in their past or abusive exes or none of that is in there. It's just them playing around. And there are some cameos from people from the other series who kind of help guide them through their kink journey, which I liked. Okay, next up, I read a new release, which is now out since it's taken me so long to film this. There is Second Dukes of Charm by Kate Bateman. This was so kindly gifted to me from B from Mama Needs to Read a Romance. She asked me to collab with a video that's actually coming out in January, and as a gift she sent me this for Christmas. I've loved Kate Bateman, so I got the arc for this. I'm actually like on her like immediate, like I get all the arcs for her. And this is the beginning of a new series. I can't remember what the series is going to be called. It doesn't actually like say yet in here. But this one is about Tess, who is the Dowager Duchess of Wansford, but she's still a virgin because her crusty old husband died before he could consummate their marriage. But so she is the Duchess, and she has been for the past, I think, 2 years, while her like solicitors tried to find the next heir, and there was just a bunch of men who died. And so it takes 2 years to track down the current Duke. And so in that time, she's been running the estates. She's been doing a good job. And she also has started a kind of like undercover investigative investigative business with her friends. So that's what this is kind of going to be about. And she's very happy being a widow because she has all the power she could want. But she isn't so sure she wants to marry again because all that power she has, she would lose. However, enter Justin Thornton, who is now a shipping magnate. And she actually has met Justin before because he is a relative of the Duke. And they actually end up having a rendezvous at a club. She's doing some spying for one of the cases she's working, and they almost hook up in a room there, and it doesn't end up happening. But then when they see each other again, and now we know that he's the new Duke, he immediately recognized her. Like, she was wearing a mask, but she wears the same dress like she wore to this party. And he is like, okay, everyone's trying to marry me off now since I'm the new Duke. I don't really care about that. I have my own business. I'm rich. I don't need this. If you still want to run the estates, how about we get married? We'd be able to have sex. It'd be fine if you end up getting pregnant. Then we have an heir. It's great. And after a little bit, when we get tired of playing around, you'll still be the Duchess and get to run this, and I'll go back and run my business. So that's how he thinks it's going to go. We go about having that going to happen. So I think that's enough to... So that's why it's second Duke's the charm, because she's been married to 2 Dukes of Wansford, right? Oh, I think it's called Her Majesty's Rebels. Okay, that's what the series is going to be called. So anyway, there wasn't anything wrong with this one. You know, it has the tropes I said, like secret tryst, a marriage of convenience, I want to bed you because you're hot type of thing. But I just was missing the magic. I've read better Kate Bateman's than this one. The conflict in this one was just dumb. Like, she walks herself right into it with this one, and I wasn't too impressed, and I'm also barely going to remember this a month from now. It's that type of one. Whereas there's other books by Kate Bateman that I can recall the characters' names. I know there's scenes that pop in my head. This just isn't one I'm going to remember, but there's nothing wrong with it. If you get a hold of the audiobook or you read this, you could read this in an afternoon and you'll have a good time. So in that case, I gave it a 4. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale. There's not really any trigger warnings for this, but we move on. You know, we move on. There it is. Okay, then I had another reread. I reread The Right Move. This time I listened to the audiobook, which was wonderful. This was fantastic. I listened to this while I was wrapping presents and doing all the good stuff. So yeah, won't talk about this too far, but this is one of my 6-star books. I love Ryan and Indy. Don't be surprised if this is very high up on my favorites of the year list. I can't wait to make that. If you haven't read this series yet, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing because it's amazing. Okay, then I had a new release, a couple new / upcoming releases that I read as well. So I got to read The Arc of Sanctuary by Claire Kent. This book is now out. It just came out the other day. This is book 6 in the Kindled series. It makes me so happy to be back. This one took a while to come to us. This series is actually going to be wrapping up in 2024, hopefully, if Claire doesn't get any writer's block for it. But this one is actually a kind of like follow-up to Citadel. So most of her books, you can read them in any order you want, but Citadel, book 5, and Sanctuary, book 6, are about a pair of sisters. So you should read Citadel first, and then you should read Sanctuary because they pair up with each other. And in Sanctuary, we have Brianna, she's a couple years older than, I can't remember the heroine from book 5, sorry, but Brianna, we had seen from book 5 that Brianna had been the one who would offer her body to men we are 8 years into the apocalypse at this point. And Brianna has to keep herself and her sister from being raped or mistreated, Brianna always offers herself. She finds herself that alpha male in any situation they're in, and she offers her body up. And she's done that for years. So she's kind of willingly let herself be used so that she feels like she still has some kind of power. Some of those men were really good to her. They were just happy to have a beautiful woman to, you know, have their way with. And other ones wanted to use her and abuse her because she was their toy. So she's kind of been treated all the ways. Now, at the point they're at, they have a safe place to stay. Her sister has a man, which is what happened in Citadel. And so she's like, you know what? Now I'm in control of my own destiny. I won't be offering myself to anyone else. I will rather die than do that again. And I'm just going to live my life. So she does a lot of trades. That's kind of what she does. So she'll go between settlements, make trades, run jobs for places. That's how she gets food. That's how she brings food back for her settlement. Now, she has a bit of competition in this aspect. There's a guy named Aiden. He's a bit older than her, as all of the guys are in this series. They're all age gaps. Claire Kent loves an age gap. I mean, me too. Same. And he sees her as competition, and he's trying to get her to stop trading in the same places that he does. So they have this rivalry going. And that kind of pisses Brianna off because she's like, Aiden, you don't get to own everything. There's plenty of jobs for everyone. You don't need to do it all. So he pisses her off enough that she's like, you know what? If you're going to be this way, I'm going to steal business from you. So now his greatest fear is she's trying to steal his business, and now she's trying to steal his business, which leads Aiden and Brianna to be in a head-to-head competition where this one town, they're a little bored, let's say. So they send both of them on a mission to get some wine from a ski resort that had a wine cellar that no one has been able to, no one has penetrated recently. And whoever brings back the most bottles of wine within, a certain amount of time will get to be their runner that they'll hire every time. So they go on this. And then she ends up getting hurt, and they end up stuck in the sanctuary of a church during a snowstorm for a few days. So this becomes a forced proximity, caring. He's caring for her, huddling for warmth, survival situation within a survival world, right? So we start to find out what has made Aiden the way he is, which, if you've read Citadel, we know a little bit about Aiden's history. But in this one, we really get to find out why he is the way he is. And we see the romance between them. And I loved it. I love Claire Kent. This one is probably my favorite since, Last Light. Or maybe it ties with Embers. I don't know. I really like Embers as well. That's the ex-boyfriend's dad, or the dead boyfriend's dad one. But yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. This one also has a very sweet intimacy in this one. A lot of Claire Kent's are pretty dirty sex in hers, which I'm all here for. They really go for it. But this one was very Brianna, it makes her want to vomit when she thinks of rough sex, because she's been treated like a toy, like a fuck toy for all these men that she offered herself to. So Aiden really needs to be very gentle with her, and it was very beautiful. There's some very beautiful stuff here. I loved it. So yeah, 5 stars, 2.5 on the spice scale. And the trigger warnings for this one are death of a loved one, PTSD, trading your body for safety kind of stuff, violence, and I will say there is death of children in the past. I just gotta warn you, because it was tough. Okay, next we have an upcoming release called Shots and Barbs by Lily Mayne. So this is the second book in her Deep Earth Dating series, which is her MF monster series. And this monster series is very interesting, not only because it's some MF, and she doesn't usually write that, but also we're 2 for 2 with more submissive monsters in this one. The men are more submissive in this one, and also quote unquote normal, I'm not calling anything normal, but normal penetrative sex isn't completely possible in this series, because humans being paired with a demiurges, I think is what they're called, they have a spiked, very large penis, and so they can't just go at it with a girl. Now in the first one, that heroine even had vaginismus, so there was no penetrative sex that happened in that one at all, except the other way around, where she was doing it to him, which was fine, and that was very interesting. In this one, it's more so this one is kind of a fuck buddy situation, and this one also has pegging in it. He likes when she does stuff to him a lot, and which was hot, but they end up using kind of I can't remember what it's called. it's not a cock sleeve, like it's a cock sleeve basically. It goes on his monster dick and it like pushes the barbs down, so it keeps him from like popping open and like latching onto her inside, right? Which that was a super hot scene because he could still feel some stuff from it. So it wasn't quite like a monster condom because it like the head was still normal, but it was fascinating, okay? The way that Lily Mayne comes up with different kinky things in here, it's fantastic. So there's lots of sex toys used in here and it's great. But the setup of this one is a kind of enemies to lovers situation. They end up where they're going to be working together for an event. Our heroine works for an event company. The hero has a business and she's putting on an event for him. This hero, he is the brother of the hero from the first one, and he was actually kind of a bully to his younger brother. So this was very interesting because if you've read the first one, you've seen kind of a rough view of this hero. You think of him as pretty cruel and mean. And so now reading about him and seeing how things were through his point of view, and then seeing him come through the revelation that he was a bully to his younger brother, and we get to see that play out in their relationship, which I thought was cool. Yeah, and our heroine is Anita. The hero is Naru is his name. Let me see what his name. His name is Nanu, or Nuni, and her name is Anita. And so, yeah, they have this crazy chemistry with each other, even though it's like a very angry, like they have some hate sex to start with. And again, they get very creative with their kinky times because of that. Now, by the time it was all done though, I didn't quite feel the love between these two. I didn't feel the romance I wanted to as I did in the first one. But again, there was some really fun, sexy stuff in this one. So if you like some monster kinky times and you like pegging, you're going to like this one for sure. So I gave this one 4 stars. It's a 4 on the spice scale. As I said, it has pegging, sex toys, the cock sleeve, there's doming, non-human anatomy. There's all of those things. So definitely give that a go. It comes out on January 5th, I think. Comes out very soon. It'll be out next week. All right. Then I read this was a new release like 2 months ago, and it's taken me a while to get to it. This was I'm Your Guy by Serena Bowen. This is book 2 in her new like spin-off of a spin-off of a spin-off hockey series, and I believe this one's going to be MM all the way through. But this one we have Tommaso, who we met in the last book, and he is a closeted gay man. Like, it isn't bisexual, he's gay, and he actually is divorced because he married a like college friend of his because he thought that's what he was supposed to do, and then was never able to fully have a satisfying sexual relationship with her, and it ended up leaving her feeling very hurt and him feeling very ashamed of himself. And he is new to this hockey team. He's having trouble fitting in. He has a bad reputation because he'd gotten a fight with his cousin and his uncle, who was the coach of the previous team, who he's a homophobe and a dick face. And he got in a fight with him because he'd said bad things about another player who had just come out as gay in the previous book, which is what that one was about. And so he's really struggling with his sexuality. And like his mom and sister, like they know that he's gay and they're kind of just waiting for him to admit it. They're trying to prove that like, oh, do you have someone in your life? Like they're not assuming that it's a woman, and he's just kind of like picking up on that. But anyway, his mother has cancer and she's going to be coming to stay for Christmas. And so he wants to make his new home welcoming for his mother. So he ends up hiring Carter, who is a interior designer who is down on his luck big time because his partner just left him and left him with a bunch of debt and left him in a really hard place. And when Tommaso offers to pay him, you know, lots of money to get his place renovated within, or I mean like decorated within a certain amount of time, it's too good to be true. Plus, they have crazy chemistry with each other the whole way through. So this was a slow burn between them, but it does also have a hero who's really struggling with his sexuality, and that's not always what everyone wants to read. So, of course, the audiobook was great. It has 2 of my favorite male narrators, and it was a good time for sure. But I gave this one 4 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale, and there is some trigger warnings for homophobia because that family is shit sometimes. All right, then I actually read a Christmas romance, looky there, and I actually read this on Christmas when we went to my grandma's for Christmas. So it was How the Hitman Stole Christmas by Sam Mariano. This is the fabled book box copy. I got a copy of this from I got this off of Mercari for a good price last year, but I didn't get to it because I'm very, very rarely in a Christmas mood. In fact, I've only read like 2 Christmas romances this year. I just don't really love some of the campiness that goes with it. I just don't. But this one was interesting. And it also connects with the Morelli family just a little bit because this is a hitman for the Morelli crime family. And he happens to be told by his sister that he needs to come home for Christmas. And so when he comes across a girl named Autumn, who her car has broken down, and her car happens to be filled with presents because she was buying presents to take home to her boyfriend, who he asked her to go buy all the presents for his family just a couple days before Christmas. Jasper takes this as a sign that, oh my gosh, here's this woman with a car full of presents. I'm going to just kidnap her and take her home as my girlfriend for Christmas. So that's what he does. He kidnaps her and takes her home for Christmas. So that's what it is. And of course, over the weekend while they're home for Christmas, she starts to fall for him. And him being the man that he is, he just wants to keep her. He's like, I should just keep her. You know, why can't I? But him being a hitman for the mafia, not being one of the like made men who's like high up in it or anything, he knows that he would be putting her in a lot of danger. So this is kind of where they're at. This was a pretty short one. I think it was just about 300. Yeah, it was just about 300 pages here. But I had a good time with this. It was fun. It was just what I wanted because it was a little bit of Christmas, but it was still a little bit of dark romance. So there's a little bit of Dubcon in here, but actually for the most part, he is, besides kidnapping her, he doesn't really force her into too much. You know what I mean? Like it's usually by the time something's going on, she wants it to. We'll just say that. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale. Then I read Twisted Promises by Lillian Harris. Wanted to get through this because Cruel Lies comes out in the beginning of January, and I have an arc for that one. So I still needed to get through this one before I could read that one because it said that you needed to read this one to know about the setup for the next one. And boy, am I glad I did that because there was quite the twist at the end of this book, and I would not have been prepared for it if I had just skipped into the arc of the next one. But this one is a reverse Grumpy Sunshine. This is a badass female Irish mafioso lady, or a mafia princess. She's the daughter of the Irish mob boss who we've seen in the previous ones. And her sister is supposed to marry Gio. If you've read the previous ones, you'll know that one of the Italian brothers killed one of the cousins in the Irish, and so they either have to have war or they need to have an arranged marriage. And so his younger daughter is supposed to marry Gio, but Gio and Isolde, they have actually had a hookup before, and when she ran away from him, then didn't tell him who she really was, and he's been looking for her for a year. And when he is getting introduced to his future fiance, he sees that her older sister is the only woman that he wants. So he goes about trying to convince Isolde that he should be with her. Now, she has a lot of trauma. She has been horribly tortured and abused. And so her father, even though she's the oldest daughter, he wasn't even going to try to make her marry anyone because he's like, you've already paid your debt you have done your duty to your family. And she is also, a fighter and enforcer for her family, so she does work for the family. But Gio is determined, and so he goes about convincing her that they need to be together. Now, there was a lot of sneaking around in this one, but it didn't really feel like cheating because Gio and the sister, they don't talk to each other, at all. He doesn't even try to woo her, so it doesn't really feel like cheating to me. It feels like that to Isolde because she's like, this man's supposed to be with my sister. So to me, I was kind of like, well, you keep saying that, but then you keep doing stuff with him. So just admit that you want to be with him so this stops feeling like that. But I had a great time with this one, although Isolde did get a little frustrating because Gio continually proves that she's the only one for him. And it's like, how many ways do I gotta say it to ya till you believe me? So that did get to be a bit much, but I'm just used to Lillian Harris is just a little bit much, right? Some of those Mafia series just are like that, and you just gotta be okay with it. So yeah, I gave this one actually 4.5 stars because I think it's my favorite in the series thus far. It was a 4 on the spice scale. There's a little bit of bondage and there's some toys in this one. And again, trigger warnings, there is depiction of torture and loss of a parent, and there's murder in this one. So be prepared for those. Then, just real quickly, I will mention, I did read Own Me by K.A. Tucker. This is the 5th book in the Wolf Hotel series. This is about Abby and Henry, and I think this was supposed to be their happily ever after one. I don't know what this was. I was so bored for it, and I know, granted, I could have reread the Wolf Hotel before this. Most of you don't even know. I read the Wolf Hotel. I read it before I fully tracked it even on here. I read it before K.A. Tucker had said that it was hers. I read it when it was Nina West, you know, like I read it a long time ago. It's one of my friend's like favorite series. It's her comfort read. But I just didn't feel like much was added with this one. I didn't like the twist that gets thrown into their lives right away. I just was like, really? Are we doing that? I don't know. So it just didn't vibe with me. So I'm not going to harp on it. I gave it 3.5, but I did rate it as a 3 because I'm just like, this is the 5th book you are putting out. Like, I don't know. It wasn't worth the hype of being another book for me. There is some voyeurism and a tad bit of sharing in this, so there you go. Okay, then I read another Daisy Jane. This one is called My Best Friend's Dad. And that's what it is. This is a pretty quick one. It's just over 200 pages. And I had downloaded a bunch of her standalones after I read The Man I Know. So I actually have a few other ones to get to as well. But this one is an insta-love, literally like at first here, like this is 2 roommates in college, and she answers the phone one day when her friend is like had left her phone at home and talks to her friend's dad, and just from the sound of his voice she falls in love with him. Okay, so for the next I think like 2 years she's pining after that she hasn't even met in person, and it was just strange. But it is also at the same time, like, so she ends up coming to stay for the summer. He gives her a job at his business. Her and her friend get a job there. And the friend, of course, ends up being busy constantly. So she's home alone with him a lot. And he actually starts wooing her. And his housekeeper / cook is, like, in on it and is helping him woo her with sweetness. So it was just kind of strange. But that's okay. Yeah, and then they end up being together. So it was strange. It's probably my least favorite Daisy Jane that I've read, but it was quick. So I gave that 3 stars. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale. And that one actually wasn't super kinky. It was just like taboo because it was best friend's dad. Okay, then I have another reread, which was Here With Me by Brooke Montgomery. I listened to the audio this time. This is technically the first book in her Sugarland Creek series, but there is a prologue that comes before this. This is a ex's dad romance. It's an age gap. It's a cowboy. He's an ex bull rider, and now he's a farrier, and she is a trainer. And after they have a one-night stand, she finds out that he's her ex's dad, and he knows that she is the daughter of his new boss, and so now they're working together. Awkwardness ensues. This is one, again, I have gushed about so much. So still a 6-star read, still super hot. Can't wait to see how it fits on my final list here. All right, coming into the final stretch here. Then I read Cherry Mint by Dirty Mudblood. This was a Dramini Omegaverse fanfic. I finally have tried some Dramini Omegaverse, and I thought this one was pretty hot. But yeah, because I read All You Want a couple weeks ago, and I liked that. So I haven't totally loved Omegaverse in, like, normal books, but I am kind of liking it in fanfic. So this is another case of like Hermione doesn't know that she's an Omega, and she starts presenting when she is at Hogwarts for like an 8th year, as kind of was with like All You Want, and so Draco ends up being her alpha for when she needs it. There's a lot of miscommunication about if they really care about each other because of the urges that they feel, which is standard, I'm learning, for Omegaverse. But it was pretty hot, and I ended up really liking it though, because I gave it 5 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. All right, then I read Unloved by Marley Valentine. This was supposed to be an arc, but the book ended up being like delayed. So by the time I got the arc, I had other stuff to read. So I finally did read it. This book is available now. And this is an MMM, like menage, friends to lovers. It's supposed to be like a college romance, but here's some of the stuff that fell apart for me. So I didn't read the first one in this, so I don't know how much this connects. It says that it's supposed to be about these different foster brothers who all find love or whatever. And in this case, one of the heroes, Lennox, gets hurt in a football game, and then because of the hit that he takes, a genetic predisposition that he has means that he's now deaf. So this starts off with him going deaf. And we like don't deal with the trauma of what that would be. One of the friends starts teaching him sign language because he had a deaf sister, and we don't deal with any issues with having been hearing for 20 years of your life and now deaf. It's just there. So I just don't understand how it was that simple and that wasn't a part of this story. Part of it is this was so short. Like, I don't know. It was only 240 pages. We have 3 characters. You know how I feel about it. When there's 3 characters who fall in love, you need to make me believe it. And while I did believe they each loved each other, I didn't see it. I don't know if that's because I didn't read the first one and I should have seen this, but they just all fell into bed with each other almost immediately. And then one of the characters is struggling with drugs and alcohol, and he has an almost overdose at one point, and we barely deal with that. And we just rushed through everything. Like, I thought this was going to tear my guts out and be this super emotional book, and we ran through everything. So there wasn't time for anything to hit me seriously at any point. So yeah, I gave this one 3.5 stars because it was an arc, but it was more of a 3 or less for me. Yeah, so there is some trigger warnings for injury, deafness late in life, and alcoholism. Okay, then I had a reread of a book that was not one of my 6-star reads. It was actually a fan fiction. So I recently did a post on my Instagram that was wrapping up all of the fan fiction I've read in the last 2 years. I listed my top 5 fanfic I've read in the last 2 years, and I did this cute little post. And one of the ones that's in my top 5 I decided was Coming Undone by One E. And I've read some books by them before, and this one is a Sirius and Hermione. And as I was like remembering this story, I just really wanted to reread it, and I'm so glad I did, because it reminded me of how beautiful this BDSM story is. Like, I swooned so hard for this Sirius. He is just a perfect man. If you're someone who's new to BDSM or new to fan fiction, I think this one could be really good. In this one, obviously Sirius lived, so he's Harry's godfather. Harry and Ginny are together in this one. They're having their first few kids, and Hermione, they have these like Sunday dinners at Grimmauld Place. They'll like go over there for dinner, and one day it's not the Sunday dinner, but Hermione takes the flu and she takes it to Grimmauld Place instead of going to Harry's. She just isn't paying attention. And when she pops through the flu, she sees that there's a woman wearing a collar and kneeling at Sirius's feet. And he's like kind of petting her hair and reading a book. And she's stark naked, kneeling on this pillow. And she's like, oh shit. And she's like, so sorry. And she leaves. But she can't stop thinking about it. And so a few days later, when they do have family dinner and Sirius talks to her and he's like, I'm not ashamed of what you saw, but do you have any questions? And he kind of got a little bit of a submissive vibe from her in the past. He has. And sure enough, she has some questions. And he explains that he doesn't have any formal agreements with anyone, but he does have some play partners that now and then will come to him either for sex or for him to help them escape for a little while. And Hermione ends up asking him to do that. So first they start off non-sexual with him helping her just go into subspace, basically. That's what this is. He helps her, like, they call it fall into it in here. And it just helps her center herself so well. So eventually things progress and they end up, you know, being in love with each other. And of course there's going to be some issues that come up, but as a BDSM story done this well does, the way that BDSM is used to deal with those things, and also the way that it helps them have better communication, and also the way that subspace is explained in this, and how sometimes you might never want to leave it and not face your problems, just fantastic. If you are someone who really loves the dynamics of BDSM and like not just the kinkiness of it, you need to do that. This also has some great cock warming in it. Will absolutely show up in the video that I'm going to make eventually. I just highly recommend. So I'll have a link to this fic down below, and it's hot, but it also like teared me up a few times. It was so beautiful. So yeah, this was a 5-star read for me for sure. And it is a 5 on the spice scale too. There's a lot in here. So yeah, definitely check that out. Okay, almost done, because then I finished my reread of Contempt, which I had to annotate for some patrons. I won't go deep into this one. This is the most recent San Mariano book, and I loved it so much. So yeah, this was one of my 6-star rereads. It's a bully romance, forced proximity. They're having to live in the same house. Their parents are together. It's a whole big thing. Check out some of my other reviews about it if you want more details. And then the final book that I just finished was another fanfic. And this one was called Mine by Graceful Lioness. And this is another Sirius and Hermione. So one of the things too, when I did my wrap up of my fan fictions, I wanted to see what percentage of my fics like was which pairing. And I love Sirius and Hermione and Lucius and Hermione, and I have hardly read any fics at all that are those. And the ones I have, though, have been some of my favorites. So I'm determined in 2024 to read more of the other pairings. I mean, obviously, I love Draco and Hermione. I have literally hundreds of those, but I want to read some of the others. So this one is another Omegaverse. It's a lot kind of like the Cherry Mint that I explained, except this one, it's Sirius. So Hermione starts presenting. She's actually living with Harry and Sirius at Grimmauld Place currently. So Sirius is like her roommate, and she starts presenting and she's in a panic because she doesn't know what's happening. And Sirius is an alpha, and so he like rushes in and she's like clinging to him and like kissing him, and it's like, I'm so scared what's happening, and he's comforting her. But because she doesn't know what's going on, their friends come in and like break them up and explain to her what's going on, and that like make sure that you're like consenting to what's happening. And then Hermione decides to take suppressants, and we skip ahead 3 years to find out that she won't be able to take them anymore. And so she's going to need to find an alpha to bond with real quick because things are going to get really uncomfortable. And now we have to face, and we have some flashbacks to why she isn't with Sirius, and kind of, you know, it's again like Hermione feels like he only would want her because of that, and Sirius thinks she'll only want him because of that, and we have some of that. But this one was really beautiful. I gave this one 4.5 stars, even though I wanted to smack their heads together a few times. Their reasoning for not believing the other person loved them completely makes sense. It absolutely makes sense for how they first share their feelings and how it plays out. Like, what else are they supposed to think, you know? So yeah, I gave that one 4.5 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. So those are all of my reads for the rest of December. I still have a day left, but we're going to count those in January. I do still have some rereads left, but we'll count those for January because I'm not going to rush myself through the last few rereads. I still have 4 left to do, and we're going to finish them and get them rated, and then hopefully in the first or second week of January, I'll have that wrap up. I also will have my December wrap up. I'm going to film that right after this, so that'll be going up soon as well. And I also will have a vlog coming, which is my first day of reading in 2024. This will be the 4th year that I've done that. I love doing it. And that will be a vlog that's available for everybody. Usually my vlogs are only for my Patreon, so if you end up liking that vlog, you'll have to check it out. Also this weekend, I have free shipping for US residents for my Etsy shop, and you can also double it with the Book Refuge 10 coupon. So definitely check that out. I'm trying to clear out some of the winter stock. I do have some new fabrics I'm excited to use, but I need to clear out the stock a little bit, so check that out. Thank you to all of my new supporters, and again, thank you to my proud producer Megan for supporting the channel and helping me do what I do. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday, and happy New Year's Eve when you're watching this, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.